evening. Welcome to our June 3rd regular Brevard City Council meeting. Folks, come on in. We got plenty of chairs. Come on in, sit down. If you want to speak during public comment, please sign up right as you walk in. Okay, I will officially call this meeting to order. As we start, I want to introduce everybody that is sitting up here. And to my far right, we have our city attorney, Mac McKellar. Next to him, we have Councilman Lauren Wise. Next, we have Councilwoman Pamela Holder. Then we have Councilman Mac Morrow. I'm Mayor Maureen Kopoloff. To my immediate left, we have our city clerk, Denise Hodgson. Then we've got Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman Gary Daniel. Next to him is Councilman Aaron Baker, and on my far left is our city manager, Wilson Hooper. Okay, with that, I would like to ask Reverend Elizabeth Rolls from St. Philip's Episcopal Church if she would please give our invocation. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and it's good to see familiar faces. Every time I come, I see more people I know, so I'm glad to be here. I'm going to offer two prayers this evening. The first, with a few alterations, is written by Woodrow Wilson. Let us pray. Almighty God, ruler of all the peoples of the earth, forgive our shortcomings as a nation, a county, a city. Purify our hearts to see and love the truth. Give wisdom to our leaders, especially the members of the Brevard City Council. And give steadfastness to our people. And bring us at last to that fair city of peace, whose foundations are mercy, justice, and goodwill, of which you are the designer and builder. Through God we pray. Amen. Amen. And another prayer. We thank you, Lord, for those who build your kingdom, for those who step forward to care for us, even at risk to themselves, for those who accept the call to military service, for those who, despite fear and threats, take action in the pursuit of justice, for those who speak up to defend rather than diminish our democratic ideals of community and trust, for those working to ensure all can vote, for those who feed the hungry and provide support to those who have lost their jobs, for those who shelter the homeless, for those who educate our children, for those who comfort the grieving, for those who reach out in hope and healing. Bless all these who are doing your work of love here and now. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Rolls. Everyone, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, honor, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Mayor, you have a quorum. All members are present.
All right, we have a draft agenda that was sent out. I believe, Mayor Pro Tem, you had some recommended changes?
Yes, I would like to recommend that we move item L1 and L3 from unfinished business and move that into the consent agenda. And I also would like to remove from the consent agenda item K3, the Bracken Mountain Preserve maintenance agreement, and put it under the nonprofit contribution discussion.
That's not under the nonprofit. Okay. So, any other proposed modifications to the draft agenda? All right, what we have right now is we've got the agenda with 4 items on consent: the road closures, the property tax releases, the personnel policy revisions, and the voluntary contiguous annexation. And K3 has been removed from consent and will be discussed during our budget discussion under nonprofits. Is that correct, what you wanted?
That's what I'll ask.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The amended agenda is approved. Council, you got the draft minutes of the May 20th, 2024 regular meeting sent out. Are there any corrections or changes to the draft minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Folks, we got plenty of seats in here. Ladies, come on in. Come on in and sit down. Make yourselves comfortable. All right, at this point, we have public comment. The public is invited to speak during public comment at this time on any topic unless it is a public hearing item on this agenda. And we have no public hearings on today's agenda, so you can speak on any topic. Anyone who wants to speak must register with the city clerk, which is what this sign-up sheet is. When it is your turn, step to the podium in front of city council, state your name and address clearly, limit comments to 3 minutes or less, and avoid repetition. Direct comments to the full council, not to an individual council member or to staff, and groups are encouraged to appoint a spokesperson on their behalf. I will give you a warning when you are 30 minutes out from your 3 minutes.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yes, we really don't want to be here all night, do we?
Say 3 minutes, not 3 hours.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Let's stay on track here.
Glad we have you around.
Our first speaker is Mary McKellar.
Good evening. My name's Mary McKellar. I live down on Main Street. I'm here today as representation of the Transylvania Young Progressives to show my unwavering support and thanks for the proclamation designating June as Pride Month here for the city of Brevard. Recognizing Pride Month is more than a symbolic gesture. It is an affirmation of our city's commitment to inclusivity, diversity, and equality. By acknowledging and celebrating Pride Month, we honor the history, struggles, and achievements of the LGBTQ+ community, both here in Brevard and beyond. The LGBTQ+ community has contributed immensely to the cultural and economic vitality of our city. From small business owners to educators, artists, and healthcare providers, the LGBTQ+ individuals are integral to the fabric of our community. Recognizing Pride Month is an opportunity for us to show our appreciation and support for their contributions, ensuring that everyone in Brevard feels seen, heard, respected, and valued. Furthermore, designating June as Pride Month aligns with a broader goal of fostering a welcome and inclusive environment for all residents and visitors. It sends a clear message that Brevard stands against discrimination and is committed to the principles of equality and human rights. This proclamation is not just about celebrating diversity. It is about ensuring that every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, can live openly and authentically without fear of prejudice or exclusion. In conclusion, I completely support the proclamation designating June as Pride Month for the city of Brevard. Thank you for recognizing the incredible contributions that the LGBTQ+ community has given and will continue to give to our great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKellar. Our next speaker is Ashley Hart.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ashley Hart, and I live at 144 Buckberry Lane in Brevard, North Carolina. My first visit here to the City Council was on May 20th, 2024, and it was to bring attention to the fact there was a Pride event happening where there was no age restriction. My concerns were how participants would be dressed around the minors and how the behavior would be around while the minors were present. I am happy to report that none of this was an issue. I do, however, recommend to any child who does not want to participate to tell another adult or a safe person, and you can do that by calling Hope for NC at 1-855-587-3463. With the remainder of my time, I would like to thank Emmett Casiato for his time served on the Board of Commissioners. However, with his seat being vacant, I would like to step up to fill his seat. I may not look like a county commissioner, but what I bring to the table is a youthful, passionate energy, helpful hands, and a love for Transylvania County. In addition to that, as a promise to the people here, if I am selected for his replacement, I myself would love to volunteer to do a lot of work on these projects at no additional cost. I also urge city council members, county commissioner members, and school board members to all take some time to volunteer. I hate to have to leave the speech, but now I'm headed to the school board meeting. It would be very accommodating to have city council meetings and school board meetings on different days for those who attend both. Thank you all kindly, and God bless.
Thank you, Ms. Hart.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is James Carley.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, good evening. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for everyone who's turning up to bear witness to civic process. I always love seeing people engaged. I also would like to express my support, enthusiasm, and gratitude for the pending proclamation declaring June as Pride Month here in our beautiful mountain city. Short speech. We all just took a Pledge of Allegiance here where we pledged to uphold freedom and justice for all. A free society is one where individuals are free to pursue their full flourishing in peace and safety, free from fear of violence, oppression, and persecution. Indeed, fear is the antithesis of liberty. By making this declaration, you are telling many members of our community who have for far too long lived in fear that they need not live in fear any longer. You are telling our LGBTQIA+ and gender nonconforming citizens that they are also welcome here in our city. Thank you again for making this proclamation, and I also have one more statement to make that, not on behalf of the planning board, but as a planning board member, your agenda item in support of the cottage court issues is very positive and encouraging pro-growth opportunity for the city of Brevard, and I look forward to hearing and following up with your discussions on that issue as well, because that will allow for greater housing construction more easily at lower cost to builders, and on net will help contribute to a relative reduction in spiking home prices for all. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Carley. Our next speaker is Cindy McConney.
Good evening, everybody. This is my first city council meeting, and I am here because the Pride Proclamation issue is very, very near and dear to my heart. So I just simply want to express my gratitude. Mr. Carley and Ms. McKellar have covered all the points beautifully, so I will keep mine short and sweet. I am somebody who has family members and friends in the LGBTQ+ community, so I am delighted that Brevard is officially proclaiming June as Pride Month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. McConney. Our next speaker is Tara McDonald.
Thank you for having the public comment section. I just want to say, my name's Tara McDonald. I've been resident here for 18 years now. There's going to be a lot of comments tonight about Pride Month. They'll be of a religious nature and others of a biological nature. I'm a social scientist and a former campus minister, so I'm going to speak to both of those. The data from all scientific disciplines has long been in agreement that the phenomenon of gay, bi, non-binary, and transhumans has existed for as long as our species has, and is in thousands of other species across the natural world besides ours. So pretending that some segments of basic biology we disagree with don't exist is kind of like sticking our heads in the sand, and it's sad to see some of our citizenry behave that way. I don't like mosquitoes much, but pretending they aren't God's creation too doesn't just magically make them go bye-bye. And in the case of gay and trans people, doing so only causes the highest suicide rates of any demographic except perhaps Indigenous people. Others say this is the population from which groomers and pedophiles come, and I would argue as a sociologist to show me that data, because every single study ever conducted has found no evidence of that. The numbers of that are so incredibly rare as to be what's considered statistically insignificant. If you want to find groomers and pedophiles, look to your straight men. Look at fathers, they're the most likely. Stepfathers, pastors, neighbors, trusted friends, and these are all the people that society is the most likely to defend when a victim is strong enough to come forward. And we don't believe the victims, we believe the perpetrators. I think acknowledging the existence of gay people and trans people is one step toward protecting victims, because it makes the education of the populace important. As to the religious piece, Paul spoke only against pederasty, the Greek phenomenon of having a tutor and tutee
30 seconds.
be in a sexual relationship. The group of men badgering Lot's house was a drunken group of straight men seeking only to gang rape. So the only relevant place in the Bible is Leviticus. If we want to ignore Jesus and abide the Levitican law, we'll give up our barbecue, our bacon, our cotton poly clothes. We'll leave the house. We will not leave the house on our periods, and we will not plant our beans and taters in the same row. So thank you so much for honoring God's creation, all of it, and honoring all of our citizenry. And I have the greatest respect for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Our next speaker is Olivia Tyner.
I'm short. I am Olivia Tyner. I have lived in Brevard since I was 1.5 years old. And I have grown up here, and my brother has also grown up and been born and raised here. I want to thank the entire council for declaring June as Pride Month. As someone who's by myself and has lots of friends who are part of the LGBTQIA committee, LGBTQIA population, it is really heartening and exciting to see that while so much on the national level is going against the progress that we've made, that somewhere in a small town in the South, we have a council that is willing to honor all of its people and make all of its constituents feel welcome. And I am really, really proud that a council where I am often the youngest person in the room when I come to these, and where most are past middle age, is still so willing to stay with the times and to honor the youth and how we are faring to bring up these issues and how we look upon it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tyner. Our next speaker is Rodney Lux.
Got it in my hand. Hi, City Council. My name is Rodney Locks. I live at 187 South Rice Street. Thank you for your service, and from personal experience, I know that you have some hard decisions to make. I urge you to seriously consider, and in most cases, take the advice of the city manager and city attorney, especially when it's not what you want to hear. In 2023, you made affordable housing your #1 goal. This year, 2024, affordable housing is your #4 goal. Your own data shows the people who work here cannot afford to live in Brevard. However, they still want to live, work, and raise their children and children's children right here and call Brevard and Transylvania County home. Some think this is a safe environment. You recognize that public safety is a major concern, and you made public safety your top priority. You also made capital improvement to water treatment plant and economic vibrancy your second and third goals. In Goal 1, 2, and 6 are all related to public safety. Goal 1 says, ensure practical safety conditions, that is adequate response times, road and safety, traffic safety. Goal 2 says maintain existing public safety infrastructure, sidewalks and streets. Goal 6 says attract and retain qualified staff, ensure adequate space and equipment for employees to do their job. Goal 1 also says cultivate a positive public perception and trust in the public safety officers. Implementing these goals will enhance public perception and trust in the city council. Your safety officials have given you their data and made their recommendation. In this budget, you can now show continued commitment to affordable housing and show your commitment to the best public safety environment money can buy. The public wants to know, what is City Council going to do about public safety and affordable housing? Finally, you must do something new. That is, work with all the elected officials to make the quality of life better for all the citizens you serve. We are an interconnected
30 seconds.
community with different roles but the same objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Our next speaker is David Warren.
David Warren, 36 Downing Park Court. Mayor Kopoloff, I voted for you. I also read your book, Discovering Germany, The Treasures of Beer, Castles, Food, and Friends, published about 12 years ago. I remember how you related your impressions when you visited the town of Weinheim and saw the schmalste Häuser in the Gelbe Bachviertel, the Tanner's Quarter. And you asked, how could anyone live in these tiny houses? Well, it sounds like you and the city council are now investigating that very question here in Brevard. When does the size get too small? Standards have already been set in the city's Unified Development Ordinance, but now it seems there's going to be changes made, amendments. Whom would these proposed amendments really affect? The answer seems obvious, primarily the poor. Those who live in spacious homes on large lots are demanding more density in the use of the land available here in Brevard. But they're not really the ones who will be impacted by the amendments. I was here 2 weeks ago and heard several citizens come forward to this very microphone and plead with the city not to raise the city's property taxes. Their backs are already against the wall. They can't even afford hardly the taxes now, much less 2 cents hike in the property tax. Of course, that's 2 cents per $100 in evaluation of their property, or $20 if you're talking about $100,000 in value. It seems to me that to have a property tax that's 50 cents across the board for anyone at any economic level on every $100,000 in value disproportionately affects those on the low end of the economic spectrum. For example, when it comes to federal income tax, if one's taxable income is $45,000, then you pay 11% of that as your federal tax. That's for a married couple filing jointly. If your taxable income is $95,000, then it's 12% for the tax. $100,000 jumps up to 22%. $191,000 or thereabouts, the tax rate's 24%. At $365,000 of taxable income, it's now the rate of 32% paying that in tax. Why is the city's property tax a flat 50 cents across the board per 100,000 of value, or 100 rather dollars in value? If we are really concerned about density,
30 seconds.
then shouldn't those whose property takes up more square footage pay a higher rate? Not just a higher amount, a higher rate in the property tax. It seems to me that the same property tax rate across the board disproportionately affects those who are on the other end of the economic spectrum from you city leaders. The same seems true of these proposed amendments, in my opinion, for the United Development Ordinance. These amendments really will not impact any of you. Will they?
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And that is everybody who has signed up for public speaking, public comment. All right, moving on, we have certificates, award, and recognition. And our first thing, very exciting, we have an oath of office for Stephanie Holland, our new city planner. And Denise, somewhere, there's Denise. Our city clerk, Denise Hodgson, will be conducting the oath of office ceremony.
I, Stephanie Holland.
I, Stephanie Holland,
Do solemnly and sincerely swear
do solemnly and sincerely swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States,
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
which are or may be established
which are or may be established
for the government thereof,
for the government thereof,
that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend
that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend
the Constitution and laws of said state,
the Constitution and laws of said state,
not inconsistent
not inconsistent
with the Constitution of the United States,
with the Constitution of the United States,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as planner for the city of Brevard, North Carolina.
as planner for the city of Brevard, North Carolina.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Stephanie, and
you.
welcome to your family that is here with you. Do you want to introduce your family members?
Sure, this is my husband Bud Holland and my daughter Jane Holland and my son Davis Holland.
Well, welcome, everybody. We're glad to have your mother as and wife as a new member of our planning department. Great. Okay. Now we have two proclamations. All right. Our first proclamation is about Juneteenth. And I would like to ask the Mary C. Jenkins Community Center Board of Directors, I know the president or chair, Mr. Randy Lytle is here, but any other members, please come up and join me here for the Juneteenth proclamation. Any other board members? Yeah, I see a few back there. Can you get on with this? It is my pleasure to present the following proclamation. Number 2024-14, Juneteenth. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwestern United States. Whereas Emancipation Day observations are held on different days in different states in the South and Southwest and in other parts of the nation. Whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. Whereas the annual Juneteenth celebration in the city of Brevard this year will be a weekend-long celebration taking place on June 15th and 16th at the Mary C. Jenkins Community and Cultural Center and Silverstein Park, and a film screening commemorating Juneteenth on June 19th itself at the Mary C. Jenkins Community and Cultural Center. Whereas, beginning this year, Juneteenth is an official City of Brevard holiday, and city offices will be closed on June 19th. Now, therefore, I, Maureen Kopoloff, Mayor of the City of Brevard, North Carolina, do hereby declare June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth in the City of Brevard, North Carolina, and urge all citizens to become more aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and the heritage of our nation and city. Signed, Maureen Kopoloff. So I will hand this actually to Edith and Andy and get a picture. And, no, don't sit down yet. I want you to give more detail about our Juneteenth weekend celebration. So, what are we doing?
Okay, so first I want to say thank you for an opportunity to stand up here and talk to you and tell you about Juneteenth, what we're planning to do. Just a little note that we started Juneteenth here in Brevard in Brevard community about 4 years ago as our first celebration, and it has morphed into a bigger celebration. Our idea this year was to have a more wider range of activities and programs going on for Juneteenth. And since Juneteenth fell on a Wednesday, kind of couldn't do a weekend type thing, so we said, hey, we'll just throw in Saturday and we'll throw in Sunday with the combined churches coming together and having services on the playground, and as well with music and food. And Wednesday will be a Juneteenth program, which we normally would do on Juneteenth, but since it's on Wednesday, we want to do something on actually Juneteenth Day. So Wednesday would be a program at the Massachusetts Community Center with the guest speaker and some light refreshments and the film, as she mentioned. So we got flyers going out for PR, and we're hoping that people can just stop by and come check out what we are building and what we're doing and growing, and continue to connect with the City of Brevard and the surrounding communities. So, thank you.
It's going to be an incredible weekend. So noon on Saturday over at, 11 o'clock for the kids, right? When is the kids?
Yes.
Children, we have children's programs for the kids at the Mary C. Jenkins Center starting at 11. At noon, we've got all these events for adults at Silverstein Park, including free food and free, you know what I'm going to say? What am I going to say, Karen? Live music and something else free. Ice cream. So then we've got games and music, and we've got vendors all afternoon Saturday. And then on Sunday, we've got our annual Father's Day basketball tournament, because that actually is Father's Day. And we're going to have free food again that the churches are providing. And the churches, I believe the African American churches are holding a joint church service
Everyone is
out
invited.
at Silverstein Park. Did I get that right, Pastor?
That's correct, and everyone is invited.
Everybody is invited.
Everyone.
So, I mean, this is going to be an incredible weekend celebration of an important day, and a celebration of the diversity and the history, and something that it's important that we all remember, acknowledge, and, come together. So thank you. And so I hope to see everybody on that weekend.
And if nothing else, you'll go away with at least a little bit of knowledge, and you won't go away hungry.
Thank you, guys. Pride Month proclamation. And I am so proud of Brevard and this community and this city because we stand for inclusion. We stand for dignity of every single person. We stand for acceptance, love, and welcoming. This is what Brevard is all about. It is about building a community regardless of our differences in whatever manner they are, and celebrating what we have in common in that humanity of everybody. And we are a welcoming and open and an inclusive city. And so I am so proud to be mayor of a town like this. And it is my honor to proclaim proclamation number 2024-15, LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. Whereas the city of Brevard is committed to promoting equality, diversity, and inclusivity for all its residents. And whereas the LGBTQIA+ community has made significant contributions to the social, cultural, and economic fabric of the city. And whereas June is widely recognized as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month, commemorating the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, which marked a pivotal moment in the fight for LGBTQIA+ rights and liberation. Whereas Pride Month serves as an opportunity to honor the LGBTQIA+ community, celebrate their achievements, and raise awareness about the challenges they continue to face. Whereas the community needs to foster an environment of understanding, acceptance, and support for all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Whereas the city of Brevard embraces and values the principles of equality, justice, and respect for all its residents. Now therefore I, Maureen Koploff, Mayor of the City of Brevard, do hereby proclaim the month of June as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. I encourage all residents to engage in educational opportunities and events that promote understanding, respect, and acceptance of the LGBTQIA+ community and express support for the LGBTQIA+ individuals, their families, and allies, and acknowledge the ongoing work needed to achieve full equality and justice. Signed, this third day of June, 2024. So, thank you everybody that came out and supported this. Thank you to the young progressives who brought this topic up. Thank you to the Rainbow Coalition. I don't know if any of the members are here, but I support and I commend their efforts in really helping to bring awareness and understanding to our community. So thank you all, and please take to heart this month during Pride Month to please educate and accept and reach out and include everybody in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is a special presentation. We have the Placerbia presentation of architectural visual guidelines, and Mr. Paul Ray, our planning director, is going to open.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, council will hear a presentation from Placerbia, a multidisciplinary planning and urban design firm that we hired last year to begin updating the city's architectural standards. Together, we have been researching Brevard's current and past architectural styles and envisioning our future vernacular through community engagement. Staff and the Placerbian team held several design workshops and open houses, a downtown walking tour, launched a project website, and created an online survey. Updating the city's architectural standards is a two-part process. The first part is creating architectural visual guidelines used for understanding and communicating what we want in terms of quality building design across years of development. That is what's in your packet and what Placerbia will be presenting tonight. It offers much-needed guidance in architecture and color schemes, especially in character areas. The second phase of the project is an actual codification of the design standards to the UDO, which is enforceable. That phase will begin later this year. The coding of architectural standards will be a text amendment with a formal recommendation from the planning board and a public hearing. Once the UDO is amended, the visual guideline book will act as a companion document, helping staff and design professionals speak the same language in architecture. No formal action is being requested this evening. Placerbia will present the draft architectural visual guidelines so that council can discuss, ask questions, and make comments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Juan Placerbia.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, residents, planning staff. We've been working with you all for, you said a year? Feels a lot longer. It's been a lot of fun, but I'm very glad we're here. I feel very confident of the work that we've done together. I'm gonna try and find out how to present this. Let me see real quick. There we go. All right. So I'm going to give you a brief presentation. I know that all of you are here for the budget, so I hope that this makes your evening a little bit more bearable. We've been, as your planning director mentioned, this is a companion document to regulations. So this is supposed to educate and give all of us a tool to be able to speak the same language. Generally speaking, if you have for instance, a new developer that comes to town, this and your standards will be able to create the basis for good communication, and it will allow you to encourage and standardize the best way to move forward for new architecture coming into your town. The document has 4 parts. It is on the website. For those of you that have not been able to see it, it's on your city website. And it's also printed for your review, council. The idea of the document is to be as user-friendly as possible, because it's not just for the planning department, it's also for residents, and it's also for developers and new architects that come to town. So the purpose of the document, as I said, is to educate and to inform and to foster good communication. The main part of the document includes stylistic character, which collects it includes all the varied architecture that you have in your town. As you all know, your city wasn't built in a day, just like Rome. And it has been responding to different times in history where there was a depression in the 20s, and so architecture reacted to that, and there was stylistic preferences coming from Europe, for instance, and your architecture responded to that. There is also a very deep understanding and appreciation of nature around you, and so your architecture responds to that. So collecting all those styles was very important. The second part is your building typologies. You're not just built with one single building type, you're built of many, and so gathering all that information and figuring out what types of buildings could go in or could be built within your city was important. And then finally, tectonic details, which basically includes everything from almost a doorknob to chimneys, balconies, materials, etc. What's been really interesting to find out during our 6-7 months that we've been working on this with you is that your city was not only built over time, but it also had different influence in different areas. So we've also divided or created some character areas within your city that respond differently. So you have your lumberyard district and you have your downtown, both very different, both very unique both full of character, but both need their own attention in their own way. So we've identified that, and we've collected it in this document, which we feel is going to be very helpful to you in the future, and it's going to be very helpful for us to be able to put together these standards. I'm going to go real quick through the document, but I'm going to give you enough so that you can see and you can feel proud, because even I'm not from Brevard, but I feel really proud to have worked on this document, because it has shown us how rich the history of this place is and how important it is to protect that character and enhance the city in the future by making sure that that character is not lost. So your history, as you all know, it starts because of your mountain landscape, and people have been flocking here because of your forestry and your mountains, etc. And so the first type of architecture that you find in the area in Transylvania County is vernacular. And vernacular is a style of architecture that basically responds to a place, and is very practical architecture. It was built by the pioneers. It was built by people that didn't know much about architecture, but responded to the materials that were in place and responded to the needs of the user or the builder or the family or the business or the use that one wanted to have that building be. And so you have that vernacular architecture that's very present still today, and it draws not just inspiration but also materiality from your mountain. We found we were very impressed to see how much interest there had been in the turn of the century, around the 1900s. And some of these examples are of Vanderbilt architecture, which expanded beyond the Biltmore estate. And interestingly enough, the architects, one of whom is Richard Morris Hunt from New York, studied in France, was trained in classical arts of architecture, and he designed architecture here in Brevard that was very rustic, and it was very much of the mountain, really respecting the character and the history that came before him. So when he came here, imagine that, somebody extremely famous from New York, renowned architect, comes to Brevard and begins to build, as you see here, architecture of the place. This is exactly the type of respect that architects back then had and architects today should have. When you move into a new place, you try to respect the rules and laws of that place. So the Vanderbilt legacy is very important and still very present today. We see some architecture being built today that uses that architecture as its backbone. And that was expanded and utilized maybe at a lesser level of detail, but with your rustic summer camps that some of them still stand from the 1920s. As you can see, this takes, it's very similar to the vernacular architecture that I just showed you, and it takes it to a bit of a higher level with the Vanderbilt architecture. And then obviously the Depression came in the late 1920s, and we have the New Deal architecture with the investment from the federal government that began to build some very important and very unique and very beautiful projects here. Again, you can see that still the vernacular is part of this architecture. You can see that the use of local materials was very present past the 1920s into the 1930s and 40s. And again, past that, in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, we have in Brevard what we call national architecture. National architecture comes at the back of the railroad, bringing materials from other places and creating something more present and more directly related to what you have in the downtown with the brick architecture. And even though today one would say if you speak about Brevard, you think of your downtown brick buildings, that was not the beginning of your architecture here in Brevard. It was more rustic, it was more wood, it was more stone, and yet the national architecture, when it came in, it began to build your downtown with more solid architecture. So you have the brick buildings and the more robust architecture come into place. Your industrial heritage also we found intriguing, and we discovered a few things, including the introduction of your legacy of rustic materials and rustic architecture with the brick architecture that was coming in with the national style. Your lumberyard district is a good example of the industrial heritage that remains here in Brevard. So you have a few styles, and you have a few elements that create very interesting architecture and very interesting character. Generally, that whole history, that again, it's fluid, right? Not one thing happened at any given time. It was coming in the back of the last influence of architecture. So you've got your brick masonry vernacular that you find very clearly in the downtown. Here's a few examples. You've also got some of that brick vernacular architecture, brick masonry vernacular in your I'm too excited about it, in your lumberyard district. And so these are some of the examples that we found, and some of the drawings of the earlier drawings that we found as well. Stone masonry, again, the stone is a material that is just so present in a lot of the architecture, and you might not see it a lot in buildings, but you see it a lot in walls. And I'll show you what we found, because we had to stop. I had to ask my team to stop documenting walls around Brevard. We had too many because they were too beautiful, and we just wanted to enrich ourselves with a catalog of walls, of stone walls, but we had to stop ourselves. Yet, it's very important, and we feel that as we move into the standards, stone walls are going to be one of the major elements that are probably going to be codified. Rustic frame vernacular, again, building from, as you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, the Vanderbilt architecture and the vernacular. You see some of the buildings that are today. You see the Cradle of Forestry. You see, again, some very unique architecture that's more recently has been built. And then the industrial, again, very usual for a town that has had industry in its past. It's not that unique, but it is something that is present, and it's something that needs to be celebrated. It's also an opportunity to create a good character area that could provide a variety of uses beyond that which you have in your downtown. And then beyond that, you've got your colonial revival. Again, some good examples that you have in the colonial revival. These typically have more columns in their facades and other styles. And we are not just putting other styles here because we were lazy. We felt, of course, that you have plenty of good styles in Brevard, but there are some styles that are not that present in Brevard, but still had to be mentioned. One of them, for instance, is the second image from the top. It's your Richardsonian. You've got also some Italianate in your courthouse and the bank as well. But these are typically reserved for more civic buildings, buildings that are a little bit less of fabric, less typical in terms of your mixed use, your commercial or your residential, and they have more of a presence. These typically, again, portray a more classical architecture and more refined architecture. All right, so moving on to the character areas. So one city and a variety of characters, and we feel that this was very complicated for us to put together, but we feel that we've done a good job in identifying those with the help of your stakeholders during our workshops and your planning department, because we think that by providing you a variety of places that are unique in themselves creates a much stronger city overall. And The five areas that we identified, one of them is the downtown, and the boundaries were in the previous page. Your Lumberyard District, your Pisgah Gateway, your US 64 corridor, and your Rosenwald neighborhood. Again, all of them very unique, all of them with a certain variety in their architecture, but with a lot of commonality. And I'll go into some of that detail now. So in terms of how we want to look at this architecture and how we want to not only preserve but strengthen the character, there are some underlying principles that one must follow. There are things that go beyond style and construction. There are things like rhythm and scale and openings, and there's certain things that are just true no matter what style you pick, right? And mainly it is because those things respond to our human scale, how we relate to buildings. So most styles do that, and there are things, again, that we wanted to separate, and they apply to the entire city. Again, height, width, proportion, the relationship of buildings to streets, roof forms, composition, proportion of openings, materials, and color. And finally, and I left that one the last, rhythm. And I leave it the last because in presenting these design guidelines to your Planning and Zoning Committee, somebody had a great question about rhythm. I will show you where in the following pages. But I wanted to take a pause real quick because each of these, even though they are defined with a very simple paragraph, they are extremely important in regulating your city. So we go in detail into facade composition. As you can see, we've got our cornice, we have our middle of the building, which is the shaft, what you would have between the storefront and the top, and then you have your storefront. Beyond that, you've got your massing. We did, on purpose, show single-family residences, even though your characters, your architectural standards will not be able to regulate in the same way single-family and smaller buildings. The scale and proportion is part of your zoning code, and it is important as the future of your city gets built that they respond correctly to context. Scale and proportion, rhythm, et cetera, from the way that buildings are subdivided within a single facade to the way that the windows are put together throughout the block. And then shop fronts or storefronts. We go as to a lot of detail. What are the mullions? What are the mountains? I had a very long debate during dinner with my wife about the difference between a mullion and a mountain. Has anybody heard the word mountain before? Be surprised. Well, good. Educated crowd. I didn't know. And it was very interesting to work with my wife and my team who are experts in this type of architecture. And then masking and buffers. This is also very important, of course. Every building, not every building, you don't experience every building in their facade. There is a rear to it. There's a service area. So the way that we mask that, the way that we make that service area feel comfortable from the street is also very important. So from the very front to the very rear, all aspects of the buildings need to be taken into consideration. So in terms of the building types that you have in Brevard, your civic institutional, obviously, these typically are the ones that get, as I was mentioning before, the towers and the turrets, and they have specific styles. Your warehouses, typically these are very large spaces with, in most cases, some blank facades. Your small-scale commercial, your strip commercial, right, which you find mostly in your highways, your drive-through commercial, which is another very important and very difficult to codify building type, your gas stations as well, your mixed use, which again, you can see in the pictures, this you typically find in your downtown, large-scale multifamily, your small-scale multifamily, which in some cases it's defined as the missing middle these days. your townhouses, duplexes, large houses, small houses, manufactured homes, and accessory dwelling units. I'm going really fast here, but all of these are the ingredients to build a good town. So no single town can be built with one of them only. And your zoning code, again, as a partner document, should and will work together with your standards. All right, so moving on to materials. Again, this is general to all. Your most iconic, your most identifiable materials are brick, stone, wood, and some composite materials that we found. As you can see here, we try to highlight those things that were important to us as we wrote this document. When polled, almost 95% of the stakeholders found brick to be the most appropriate for citywide architecture. Building colors, again, very important. We investigated the colors that you have present today, and then we polled and we asked the residents which colors were appropriate. And funny enough, they were very similar. Everybody wants their earth tones, and you already have the earth tones. So it was a matter of defining and expanding on those earth tones. We talk about murals as well. In some cases, they are appropriate, in some others are not, and you already have a process for those, and which we will look into in more detail as we move on to the next phase. And then roofs and parapets, towers and cupolas, again, mostly reserved for your civic buildings. Doors, windows, mullions, muntins, all those things that I have a lot of fun discussing with my wife over dinner. And then columns and railings, from the very classical to the more vernacular, exposed structures, again, from the memory of your Vanderbilt and your vernacular architecture, those exposed structures and trellises and exposed wood structures are very present in Brevard. Canopies and awnings. Again, we found very interesting differences between the way that those are used in the downtown versus those that are used in the, for instance, your highway or your lumberyard district. And then finally, arcades, something that is not very present here in Brevard, but still it's a necessary element as you're building a town. And then balconies, porches, again, I don't have to tell you the importance of porches. Steps, and I made my team only include 2 images. We have about 100 of them. They are extremely beautiful, and I don't think that we found one. I don't think we found a repeated one. So that's how unique your stone and your steps, your stone walls and your steps are. Walls, steps, portico shares, and I'll go into this one in a little bit more detail in a second. And then finally, signage. I'm really happy to say that most of the elements that we found in your town are very unique, and they already follow in some way the direction of the history and the legacy that you already have. It's a matter of communicating that character that will allow you to make sure that, again, that you enforce and that you reinforce that character for future generations. You can see here, for instance, in terms of the signage, for Brevard College, they use wood and stone. It's a stone wall. It's earth tone. I mean, it already follows what we already found throughout your city. So it was very interesting to find. All right. So in terms of your character areas, and I'm going to go through all of the details of your character areas. Again, if you want to see more detail. I sound like a commercial, but if you want to see more detail for this, you can go to the website and find everything that we did. But every single character area has its own color variation, material variation, and element variation. In general, the downtown is made up of blocks. In most cases, they are complete blocks. In some others, you have what we call in the business missing teeth. And missing teeth are gaps that create opportunities for open space, as you have used in your city. And in other cases, they can become eyesores. So those gaps, those missing teeth are the ones that we pay attention to. You can see here, I'm not sure if you can see it very well in the screens, but we drew and we began to analyze how these buildings are divided and the rhythm that they create. And I told you that I was going to pause at rhythm. We got a question during planning and zoning about rhythm and what is rhythm and can it get boring? My answer got me really excited because it took me back to second year of architecture, but my answer was the rhythm is that which creates, let's just say, the base of a music composition, right? So you need that rhythm to make sure that you're moving through that song. At the same time, you need variation in that music so that it creates an emotion and it carries that song through. So while rhythm is important and it needs to be repetitive, then you begin to sprinkle it, let's just say, with windows, doors, color, material, different types of brick bonding, different awnings, different colors on the awnings, inset doors, outset doors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So rhythm, again, it's not about making your city monotonous. It's about creating the basis for a richer architectural expression. And so your building types here in the downtown, more than anything you have your mixed-use buildings, your civic buildings, and larger scale, let's say, and your multifamily. In terms of materials, I don't think anybody can deny that brick is the most prevalent. I love the image that we took of this brick pattern that you have. This is actually from Brevard. You can see the level of pride that the architect and the contractor back then in the 1920s when this building was built had when they put these bricks together. I mean, how easy is it to put one brick on top of another with a common bond or a Dutch bond? But the level of intricacy that you have here, it's really unique, and it's something that should be encouraged. At the bottom of each of these pages, you'll see examples of other places. So you can see inspiration. The two images at the bottom are from somewhere else. The images at the top are things that we found in your city. So brick patterns, as you can see on the one before the last, the column one before the last, the different brick patterns that you can have. The one that you have in your city is not even here. I mean, that's how unique it is, right? So it's not a typical bond. And that's why, you know, encouraging new development to a higher standard is the Brevard way, or it's what Brevard should strive for. And roofs and parapets, again, together with towers and cupolas, you have civic buildings in the downtown. Those, again, are the ones that are unique, and they are your destination, your unique buildings that you celebrate. Doors, shop fronts, you have more shop fronts in downtown than elsewhere in your city. And again, those come in a variety of colors, shapes, and forms. It is important, as you may have seen in the facade study that we did, that the elements that become the entrances to your buildings are celebrated not just at the door level, but at the entire building. I would go back to, in fact, forgive me, I'll go back here because, again, it's a very important lesson. If you look at the way that the architecture here, can you see the mouse? Yeah. So this creates a rhythm, as you can see here. This is a double, a single, a double, a double, a double, and yet you have 2 windows, 3 windows, 3 windows, 1 window. And that 1 window is exactly where your door to the second floor is. And this doesn't just happen here, it happens in a few other places. You have it here as well, that door, that window. You see here, that's your door to the second floor, and that's the only place where the bay only has 1 window. So it's really important when you're talking about doors and entrances to buildings that it's not just about putting a door. It's about celebrating that entrance and calling that entrance to everybody else by the design of the entire building. I think I sound a little bit like a nerd, but it's true. The more that you try to encourage these small lessons to architects that come to town, the better your architecture will be. Again, hold everybody to a higher standard, and you'll maintain the beauty of Brevard for many years to come. Columns and railings, walls and fences, again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Canopies and awnings. The canopies and awnings create a space on your sidewalk that is welcoming and makes people stop in front of shop fronts, helping on the economics of your commercial places, or of your commercial stores. And then we have the Lumberyard District, as I mentioned, very unique, something to be celebrated. It is an opportunity to, it's a place because of the amount of blank walls that you have to be more creative. It has more rustic materials, more worn materials like metal and wood and worn wood and also brick. The building colors on the left, you see the ones that are existing, earth tones, right? Very gray. We would encourage, and in fact, we heard from you that there was a possibility of being a little bit more colorful in the Lumberyard District. Again, giving some, I guess, more artistic freedom somewhere to be able to relieve the pressure of the more rational architecture into, for instance, the Lumberyard District. Roofs and parapets, again, you can be more inventive. We're sharing with you at the bottom some inspiration from other places. Again, the pictures to the top, the 4 pictures to the top, and the 3 to the right are existing of Brevard. And then we've got your Pisgah Gateway. Both the Pisgah Gateway and on your highway architecture are very difficult, and it's not just in Brevard, it's everywhere. And in part it's because of the corporate architecture that has, I guess I'll just say it, invaded the entire country. And so wherever you go, wherever you drive, you still have your same McDonald's. It looks exactly the same, whether it's here, California, or Washington, D.C., it doesn't matter. And so we found, fortunately, some unique architecture that's already beginning to take place in here. And we've seen that some of the materials are still being used, some of your vernacular, some of your rusted metals. Your building colors, we also found that that most of these are also using some level of earth tones. Again, the variety that we could increase those colors may be important for future development. Roofs and parapets, doors and storefronts, and I think I will and here, roofs, parapets, doors and storefronts. Again, things that in your gateway and in your corridor are extremely important. Don't forget that both of these are auto-oriented. So the type of architecture that you have here needs to respond to a different mode of transportation, a faster mode of transportation. Your signs typically need to be a little bigger because you're going a little faster, so you need to be able to take them in and be able to read them. Your building materials, again, for your Highway 64, should follow the same rules that we have for the entire city, with heavier materials at the bottom. And you already have some examples of that, like stone, and creating lighter colors at the top. Your building colors should also follow the earth tones that we have seen being used throughout the city. And then porches and signage. Did you skip portico shares on this one? You skipped it? Oh, damn it. You guys have to see this. Because we had an epiphany on this project. Is it before or after, Dylan? It's after, right? Okay. Because I have to show you something. It was something that made me run home and have a, no, before that, right? Full view? All right. Don't worry, I'll skip a few slides afterwards so that this doesn't become longer than it has to be. But I think that this is really important because it was an epiphany that we had, and we feel that it could solve a lot of the issues that automobile architecture typically brings to a city. And again, it's a problem that we see, you see it? It's a problem that we see pretty much everywhere, where drive-through architecture becomes extremely. Is it in the general? Was it earlier? Oh, man. See, the planning department knows this document better than we do. What does this say about us? Here, perfect. All right, so you have, I know, I'm almost over, everybody. Don't worry. 74. There you go. This one, right? So this is what's really interesting, and it's something that I have struggled for many years. And it's the idea of how do you bring in an element such as a drive-through to traditional architecture? Because traditionally, we wouldn't have a drive-through. I mean, drive-throughs are sort of like the grandchildren of your gas stations. That gas stations began to appear in the United States in the turn of the century with the Model T, right? Ford's Model T. What we realized is that we have a very similar element in our architectural toolbox, which is a portico-share. And portico-shares can actually be very beautiful. And so your drive-throughs should be celebrated more so than just through along or on the side of a commercial building. They should be a part of the architecture itself. So if you ask for the architecture of your highway to be more unique and adapted to the character of Brevard, so should the drive-through, or in this case, a portico-share. And portico-shares, by the way, go back to, well, the cocher in French is a horse-driven carriage. So it's before the car. So it is an element for architecture that does exist, that did exist, and that could be brought back. I give you two examples in this. We have a few more, but in this report, we give you two beautiful examples of exposed architecture, as you can see here, used elsewhere, that could be, imagine this being your McDonald's. Is this being recorded? Okay, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, whatever it is, your food, your choice of fast food, but it could potentially, again, be a positive addition to your architectural collection, rather than being a detriment to, or an eyesore along the highway. All right, I'm gonna move back to where I was. Finally, we have the Rosenwald neighborhood. And for this neighborhood, the reason why we're including a residential neighborhood here, which again, is a question that your planning and zoning committee asked, was because we felt that it was being developed too fast. We heard that from you. And there was a need to identify what was unique about it. So as new development comes into the neighborhood, they could be, again, more respectful and could pick up on the original legacy and character that the neighborhood still retains. We found some, again, very unique architecture that happened. We researched some of the original masons that were residents of the Rosenwald neighborhood. We found some very interesting and unique structures there. And as you can see here, something that is throughout Brevard. Here's your one more stone wall right here, and a beautiful steps going up to the house. So again, you have some very rich architecture in the neighborhood. Your historic Roseman Middle School in Rosenwald as well, and which introduces again another building type to the neighborhood that informed us on the type of architecture and materiality and colors that we should strive to include in our guidelines. And again, a few others. It's not all about stone and civic buildings. Some more, I guess, lesser, not as heavy, architecture that is not as heavy, with more wood porches, etc. This is one of the buildings that still remains from the 20s. We saw this, and actually that still exists today, and it's in one of the earlier pages of the document, one of the black and white pictures that we identified in the catalogs. And the building materiality, again, it's not that different from the entire city, but it does begin to bring that scale down to the residential. And while we cannot codify residential buildings in the same way that we can larger buildings, we can identify scale and proportion for them, which would allow us to, again, keep with existing character. Building colors, roof and parapets, walls and fences. As you can see, we have lots of pictures of walls and fences and steps. And then I will end, the document ends with an appendix, which includes some of the material and some of the information that we received from you during our time here. Also the online survey that, was extremely helpful for us to hear from a lot more people than those that actually came in person. And yet, I have to tell you that we've had better attendance in this workshop here. It seems that your stakeholders, council and mayor, are very, they do care a lot more than other cities. And so I feel that's the reason why we had such great attendance. But we heard a lot from you, and the document incorporates all those opinions and will allow us to be better informed as we draft the guidelines and the standards. I'm sorry. With that, just to tell you and to remind you, this is not the standards. This is a guideline, a companion document to your standards that, again, we feel is going to be extremely useful as one more tool in the planning department's toolbox to be able to communicate hopefully a higher standard for architecture as you continue to develop this beautiful city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. That was a wonderful overview.
Plus to all the residents too, and thank you for being involved.
Well, let me see if council has any questions at this point. Well, let's start with our architect on council. Mr. Wise, any comments or questions?
Just one or two things. First of all, the quote, "The drive-through is the grandchild of the gas station." That's gold, man.
It's copyrighted. No, it's not.
I want to thank you for all the work you put into this as an architect. I know this is a huge undertaking. And I think it is very important to recognize the role of vernacular architecture in our community, especially. And as you mentioned, the role of rhythm, proportion, and the fabric in our city. And especially when we're looking at automotive architecture, with another copyright term, but how we thoughtfully develop or help continue to develop the 64 corridor and other corridors coming into our city. We really have lost control of that. We need to kind of regain our focus there. So it's going to be a long night. I don't want to get too crazy, but man, I'm jacked up. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Holder?
Thank you for your time and this very detailed presentation. One of the reasons I ran for council is for us to work together as a community. And you all know I'm going to be careful. I just didn't feel that in this process. The Rosenwald community, I understand there were several meetings, and we didn't know about it. We didn't know about the meetings. And there was a meeting that was held a few weeks ago that for the first time, we saw some of the presentation that you shared tonight. I would love to see the process where we would be more involved in totality as a community, where we can all come together and share our thoughts and, how we feel about it. I think you have some great ideas, but I'm feeling a little left out here. And so I would love to see where we can get into a process that would involve the community as a whole, regardless of where we live. If it involves Brevard and we are Brevardians, then we can come together as Brevardians and work together. I would like to see that process. But thank you so much.
Mr. Morrow?
I think we have to thank George Vanderbilt for a lot of this, and New York architects, whether it's Hunt or Gustav Stickley. And I'm thankful that you put it through in the summer camps, which addresses really the natural features of what living here is all about. But I think that all blends and ties together. It's what brought George Vanderbilt here to start with. So it's a celebration, if you will, of architecture for a place, and for us to understand better what our true sense of place is and how we honor that. And it's a wonderful document to hopefully will do that and inspire other developers to complement and I think that's what you say. That's what this is intended to do, so thank you very much. I know Paul, and talking to him over it, he's excited as he can be as a planner to have a document like this in the toolbox. So, thank you.
Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, I think these guidelines are essential for us to be able to move forward with the plans that we have envisioned that we're going to be creating. As I've said before, we've looked at rewriting some of our guidelines, doing some form-based codes in the past, but we did it without this book, this vision. And this, for me personally, really clarifies a vision of what it is that we're trying to achieve. Because it's hard when you look at Brevard and the diversity of style and architecture and the neighborhoods to come up with a unified vision of what we want our ordinance to help us, guide us to. So I really appreciate this, and thank you for doing that. So.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I want to, I know that I got to thank the local history room because I know at the library, because I know you guys spend a lot of time in there, and I used to work up there, and so just a quick shout out to that place. I don't know if anybody out there has spent any time in there, but it's a great place to stop and visit. And I want to thank all the citizens and who did participate for their feedback. I think you can definitely see some of that in the work here, and I think. The importance of this is really that the reason a lot of us love Brevard is because it has a very solid sense of place, and it feels very rooted in where we are in the world. And I know some people will probably hold this against me, but I think that Plus Serbia and I both share the home state of Florida. I was born there, and I will defend certain parts of Florida very vehemently, but there are large swaths of that state which have completely lost their sense of place, and I don't think you would argue me with that. But that is why things like this are so important, that we can maintain that sense of place, and it's not just about small town charm or small town character. It really is the architecture and how rooted we are in our history and our place in the world. The most important thing, I think, is that this isn't about taking Brevard and freezing it in time and putting it in a museum case for all time. It is about guiding how we can grow and change and meet the future with maintaining that important sense of place. So I'm really excited for the next step. I think this is a great start, but I'm interested in how this gets translated into actual standards that can be enforced or asked of developers. So looking forward to that, and thank you for your work.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Juan. Great job. And we've got, I think, a great foundational document here to move forward with. So, thank you. Anything else, Planning Department, that you want to have with this? That's it. That's it? Okay. All right. We will move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda, if I've got this right. The ordinance declaring road closures for the special event, 4th of July. 2, the property tax releases for May of 2024. The personnel policy revisions. And number 4, the ordinance, the voluntary contiguous annexation Pisgah Hospitality LLC, intersection of Lambs Creek Road and US Highway 64. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent is approved. I think since we have been here for an hour and a half, we will take a 10-minute break. right, we've got everybody back. Excellent. All right, we are moving on now to the adoption of the to our unfinished business, adoption of the FY 24-25 budget and ordinance. Mr. Manager, did you want to make some remarks?
Yes, ma'am. So there are a couple of procedural nuances that we have to follow this evening with regard to the budget. And Mr. Daniel added to that list of procedural nuances with his request to consider the SORBA agreement as part of the budget discussion. And so if you're following along in your booklet, which I see you are, Mayor, I'll refer you to page 34. This is our list of nonprofit contributions in the budget. And state law requires that anyone who sits on the board of directors for a nonprofit entity that's given grants or financial support by the local government recuse themselves from the vote. And so, if you or your spouse are a member of the board of directors of the following entities, we'll need a motion to recuse you from this next discussion. Chamber of Commerce, Rise and Shine, El Centro, Heart of Brevard, Sharing House, Pisgah Sorba, Pisgah Conservancy, Transylvania Economic Alliance. And I think that is Aaron and Pamela and anyone else,
All right, so,
themselves or their spouse serve on that committee, or those boards, excuse me.
okay, so we have, Aaron is on the Economic Alliance, okay, and Pamela, are you
Rise and
on
Shine.
Rise and Shine? Okay. And no one else is on the board of directors of any of these, or your spouse? All right, so I need a motion, well, what do I need, Mr. Attorney? I need a motion to recuse,
Just a motion to recuse them from discussion of those appropriations.
Correct.
or the vote, or
The
any,
vote regarding those appropriations.
okay.
And they'll be able to join in
After we
for the-
finish with this. Do I have a motion to recuse Mr. Baker and Ms. Holder from this discussion on the nonprofit contributions?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, they are recused. Do I have,
I have a point of clarity. Does that mean we do not vote on any of those, or just the two in which we're involved?
I would say just to cover our rear ends, it should probably be for all of them,
Okay.
recused from all of them.
all right, so at this point, we are actually going to look for a motion regarding our nonprofit contributions that the manager just read through. This is on page 34 of your budget. Do I have a motion to approve the nonprofit contributions as listed on page 34 in the budget?
So, Mr. Daniel, do you have an alternative motion that you'd like to offer?
I'm thinking, because I'm sort of, for discussion, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion that we adopt this as presented.
All right, so we have a motion to adopt it as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we will now have discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Daniel.
Okay, so my concern, which I expressed at our Finance Committee meeting this morning, is that SORBA is receiving these funds via a contract for services rendered, and the part that so my concern is that if and when, in the past, we have made these contributions to be 1% of our total budget for a charitable nonprofit. This year, we actually didn't use that formula, so it sort of doesn't necessarily apply in this case. However, if and when we do return to the 1%, and I think there is discussion that we would do that, My feeling that is that contractual donations or contractual payments such as this should not be included in this charitable ranking. Because it takes up money that could be better, more appropriately allocated to a charitable social service that we need to support in our community. And because it is a contract for services rendered, and I've also raised that same issue with the Heart of Brevard. These should be coming out of the general fund, in my opinion. So that's my discussion on that, is that I'm not saying that I don't want to spend the money. I do. I'm just saying that I don't think the money's coming from the right place. And I would like that clarified in future budgets.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Mr. Morrow?
I don't disagree that it appears Pisgah Sorba is no longer a nonprofit in this case, in the sense of where they are providing a service, and that's yet on the agenda. Heart of Brevard donation has been always over and above their tax rate, so for specific reasons, and in this case, it's mainly for improvement of sidewalks and that kind of thing, right? So that could come from other places, I suppose. I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay. Mr. Wise?
Just want to make sure I understand, in terms of the SORBA, we're okay to move forward with that this year, but we just want to make clear, I think, that in the following years, that gets shifted into, if we continue with that contract with them, it gets shifted into into the general fund for any rendered services.
That is my thought personally, that simply because we're not using the 1% formula, so it's not taking money from some other charitable, social organization. However, it is ongoing, and it is implicated in the contract that it will increase.
Yeah.
So I think it should be moved somewhere else.
And I agree with that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on the table. I'll call for a vote unless there's any further discussion. So
Can we review the motion again real quick?
the motion was, to approve
As presented.
To
as
approve.
presented.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I believe Mr. Daniels' comments are that next year, this needs to be done differently. But you were okay with it this year.
Got it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have 3 ayes and 2 recusals. So the nonprofit contributions are approved. Now, I think we still have, the maintenance agreement, which was moved to this area, that we need official approval on for that.
So that agreement was reviewed by the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee, and their suggestions were brought to the SORBA representatives, who gladly accepted those. And so the document as presented in your package is the sort of final draft that I'm asking for you all to authorize me to sign this evening.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agreement with Pisgah Sorba?
So moved.
Okay, who said what?
Lauren can have it. He's the new guy,
And
so.
a second, okay, all right. We'll
Second.
open it, we'll open it for discussion. Mr. Wise?
We reviewed this in our committee, and it's a good agreement. I think we can move forward.
Ms. Holder?
No comment, thank you.
Mr. Morrow?
No comment.
Mr. Daniel?
No other comments.
Mr. Baker?
Just to say that, I think we vetted this pretty thoroughly. They came to several committee meetings, and they have similar agreements with parks that are in the city of Asheville. Ours is different, but they have a similar relationship up there, so excited to see this.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The Piscasorba agreement is approved. All right, we're moving back to the adoption of the rest of the 2024-25 budget and ordinance.
So I think y'all have heard enough from, so sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
I think y'all have heard enough from me about the contents of the budget, and so I'll just suggest that we take the following procedure, and that is a motion that, if it's not to approve my recommended budget, includes the one or more of the alternatives listed. So for example, depending on what the council agrees to, motion to approve FY25 budget with alternatives 1, 2, and 6, for example. A motion that sounds something like that. Or if there's a change that you all want to discuss and after discussion adopt that's not captured in an alternative, and Councilmember Holder, when we talked earlier, it sounded like maybe you had one. I asked that that change be articulated in the motion as well. So it might be a lengthy and wordy motion, but if it follows that format, staff will know what you're talking about, and we'll be able to amend the adopted budget to read what your intentions are.
All right, so we have the budget. We have 8 possible alternatives, numbered 1 through 8, just so that we're all talking about the same thing. And they are on page 161 and following in your packet. So, do I have a motion concerning the budget?
Make a motion that we approve the manager's recommended budget with alternative 1 and alternative 4.
Second.
All right, so alternative 1 is to maintain the current tax rate, and alternative 4 is to remove funding for 2 police vehicles and allocate those funds to the downtown master plan and the Estito Trail.
And designate unobligated fund balance to purchase 1 police vehicle.
Right, and, yes, sorry, yes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. We will open it for discussion. And who made the motion?
I did.
Oh,
Yep.
please open discussion.
Yeah, I think we've certainly had a lot of discussion on the budget, so I don't want to go over the ground we've already covered. I don't, as I said, I don't think the tax increase is appropriate, given that it's directly tied to the increase in the fire department personnel that we share the cost of with the county until we address the long-term prospects of that contract that we have with the county. And again, I'm a proponent of both the multi-use path fund and the downtown master plan as fulfilling the priorities and the vision that not just this council has set, but councils before us have set. I also take this opportunity to correct some comments from public comment that regarding the priorities that council set at our strategic planning session. Those were, as I understand them, they were not in order. So we had 8, I think, priorities, but they were not listed in our preferred order. We had a different exercise where we actually went through, what our priorities would be moving forward. So I believe this council still supports, the multi-use path fund and the goal of completing the Estito Trail and also continuing to fund the downtown master plan as we've made some improvements recently, but we know there's more to do to fulfill the master plan.
Anything else, Mr.
That's
Baker? Hey, Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, as far as the tax increase goes, I also feel that we do need to do this. I think that is an important goal that we need to have, but we have a particular relationship with the county that is a shared responsibility financially for our fire safety. And I know that our fire chief has done extensive work on negotiating this. But I feel like it needs to go to the next level. And I think that we need to hear a more definitive answer on this. In other words, if the county commissioners are not going to do this, I want to hear them say that out loud, because there is a responsibility that is shared for that safety, for fire safety. And then the other items are, we've got the Estito Trail, we've got downtown master plan, things have been happening. I personally think when you're rolling, you don't hit the brakes. You keep rolling. And I personally would like to see us maintain the momentum that we've had on those projects by continuing to fund them, so.
Mr. Morrow?
Interesting, you've heard my comments about supporting the tax increase and the fire department, so I won't go into that. But what's wrong with taking alternative 3 too? Gary, what do you think about that one? And alternative 3?
I'd have to find it on here and read
Well,
it.
it's removed funding for downtown planners, increased endowment fund, the downtown master plan. Make that an option with your committee.
Oh, I think 1 and 4 is the cleanest.
Okay. All right.
And personally, I'm just.
I don't have any more.
Okay. All right. Ms. Holder?
I like alternative 1 that proposes that we maintain the current tax rate. I like Mr. Warren's suggestion maybe next year to study the progression of tax increases based on the property value. I would like to further propose, because one of the key items that we talked about is safety, and so that we could purchase one police vehicle, and use that $70,000, and then use the $20,000 that Mr. Morrow just mentioned for a planter, and that could go towards a full-time firefighter. Just need to find $5,000 more. Doing this would help us keep that number 1 goal of safety. Still talk with the county about adding fire staff members. We need that protection. And we need to know that we're covered prior to taking funds to build trails that will need security, coverage, and maintenance. And if we can't do that, just purchase one vehicle and use the $70,000 to go towards housing, or just buy the 2 vehicles. Going forward, I would like to know more about the fleet of vehicles and what is the criteria to replace them, and do we need 2 each year? I certainly don't want to look at purchasing 3 next year just because we only purchased 1 this year. And so I would like to know what the criteria is for that and when they get replaced. But that's what I suggest.
Excuse me, Councilmember Holder, I missed your second proposal, $70K from police car to housing, to increase.
So, yes, if we do not put it towards these one person for the fire department, that 70,000, that we would just only purchase one vehicle and then take $20,000 that was going to go for a planter, and that will cover most of the salary for the full-time firefighter.
Right, but then you had another one about housing.
I said if we don't agree with that, using those funds towards the firefighter, then use those funds towards housing.
Okay. So, I kind of see those as two distinct alternatives, number 9 and 10. Mac, would we need a substitute motion?
Well, and we would have
Well,
You gotta vote.
we haven't finished with what's,
yeah, I think we've got it would be a request to amend it, so I think perhaps let everybody discuss and see if there's support for amending Councilman Daniel's motion.
Okay.
right. We're still in discussion, so let's finish so that everyone has the opportunity to discuss before we start amending anything. Mr. Wise?
I'm also not in favor of the property tax increase for fire. I think there's just, as everyone said, a lot of negotiation to happen there. Again, I do want to emphasize that the Acoustic Trail and Esto Trail are happening, and they're going to bring a huge amount of development, and we have not planned for that development. And as we just saw with Placerbia, if we don't plan for that, we won't have control over it. So those, I think we need to get our eye on the ball, because although we have funding for some of that, we don't have full funding for those projects. We have funding for construction, but we don't have full funding for everything there. So I think it's really important we keep moving those projects forward, because they are recreational trails, but more importantly, they're engines for development in our communities, and they're going to drive people here, drive housing, drive businesses. We can't lose sight of that.
All right. Mr. Baker, I believe you made the motion. Do you wish to amend your motion based on the discussion?
I'm going to leave my motion as is.
Okay, then I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. I believe that's correct, Mr. Attorney.
That's correct.
All right, we have a motion on the table, which is the manager's budget with alternative 1 and 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So we have 3 ayes and 2 noes. So the motion passes. Okay, believe we have a budget, Mr. Manager.
Many thanks.
All right, moving on to our next bit of business. Unfinished business, that is the proposed amendments to the City of Brevard Unified Development Ordinance, Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 19, group developments and subdivision regulations. And our senior planner, Emily Brewer, is going to present.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So we had the public hearing on this item at the last meeting, where I gave a lengthy presentation about all the different changes, so I'm just going to go over it very quickly. The Building Brevard 2030 Comprehensive Land Use Plan calls for a development pattern that respects Brevard's sense of place and prioritizes livable communities. And our UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, establishes the procedures and standards for development and the subdivision of land within the city limits and the ETJ. So this is a staff-initiated text amendment that began as a review of our subdivision ordinance. The subdivision ordinances govern how a property may be divided in order to provide for orderly growth and development, protect and enhance property ownership and land values, maintain conditions essential to public health, safety, and welfare, facilitate adequate provision of public services, and facilitate the further re-subdivision of larger tracts of land into smaller parcels that may be developed. So, as I mentioned during this process, when we were looking at our subdivision regulations, we ended up broadening this scope to be able to examine development patterns more generally as part of our Unified Development Ordinance. So with that, we included group development regulations where you place more than one principal structure on a lot as part of a development. This initiative was discussed and workshopped with Planning Board quite a bit. We worked with Planning Board in October, January, February, March, and April on this before they ultimately recommended in favor of adoption of these amendments. I won't read this whole thing, but I would like to just point out a couple things in particular. The group development regulations are something that really isn't covered in our current ordinance. So it's very important for us to be able to actually document some of these regulations, that we're able to require things for street access, connectivity between buildings, setbacks, among other things. The proposed amendments also establish different types of group developments that are permitted in certain zoning districts, which includes a new form of missing middle housing, the cluster home development. We also talked a lot about, and a lot of these amendments are about subdivision, of course. We revised the definitions for subdivision as well as clarifying the standards and procedures for each of those. We did make one change since the public hearing in response to a council member's concern about the potential for circumvention of some of these regulations. We now include that the proposed amendments now include a caveat that developments that create interior lots for the purpose of development, so a group development that has interior lots where a building will be created, not an environmental containment parcel or something like that, are required to follow the same submittal and review process as major subdivisions. This really is to make sure that the technical review committee goes through all of these requirements at an earlier stage in the development process, and we're able to work that in. So that is just one minor change that was made since the public hearing. But otherwise, the changes to the subdivision regulations are really meant to make this as clear-cut as possible, as they are required to be a ministerial act, either by the administrator or by a quasi-judicial procedure. So we are clarifying all of our regulations and making sure that they can in fact be done ministerially instead of requiring it to go through a full quasi-judicial hearing and procedure. I did mention that the Building Brevard 2030 comprehensive plan includes development pattern as an important element, but it's also important for us to identify some of these other actions. The action land use and housing number 4, identify areas across the city that are best positioned to accommodate future growth. Land use and housing number 9, evaluate and amend development ordinances to facilitate infill development on vacant and underdeveloped parcels, as well as the revitalization of developed parcels. And finally, land use and housing 19, enhance communication of land use planning efforts, policy development, approvals, and processes. So we believe that these text amendments before you are consistent with our comprehensive land use plan, based on all of those different goals and actions that we have outlined there. So tonight, we ask that council takes one of the following actions. 1, adopt the amendments as written. 2, adopt the amendments as revised by council. 3, reject the amendments. 4, send the amendment back to planning board for further study and consideration. Or 5, table the matter for future consideration and or public hearings. And in accordance with North Carolina general statutes, Planning Board has also submitted a statement analyzing the consistency and reasonableness of this proposal with regards to the policies and plans of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. All right, do I have a motion regarding this amendment?
I move we adopt amendment as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll open it for discussion. Mr. Morrow.
I'm continually amazed, Emily, what all the work you all do to improve our housing. Thank you.
Mr. Wise.
Just echo what Max said.
Ms. Holder.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Daniel.
It's a lot of work, thank you.
Mr. Baker.
Okay, you know me, I got some questions.
Okay, can you talk a little bit, in a little bit more detail about how the new process for the technical review committee would help alleviate, some of the concern that I expressed at the last meeting?
Sure. So the technical review committee, so if I remember correctly, your concern was that by having the group development and the subdivisions being separate, and by pulling out group developments as individual elements, it made it a little less clear for us to be able to regulate both of those, and instead wanted to make sure that there was no way for a group development to circumvent the subdivision regulations, because we're separating all of these out in order to make it more clear. The change that we made in response to that was by making sure that the major subdivision are subject to the requirements and the procedures outlined, that subdivisions that create interior lots for the purpose of development are subject to the requirements of section 4.5 major subdivision review process. And this is a way for us to make sure from the very beginning, we have the technical review committee looking at those parcels to make sure that they are, in fact, accessible for emergency vehicle and all of those different kinds of things. This is a way for us to ensure that when we're subdividing the land, before a development is even considered, we're able to have that review, that really critical review. And the technical review committee is comprised of technical experts from police, fire, water, wastewater, public works, building code, fire marshal. So we're able to have all of those experts take a look at the very specific things before we even move forward with the subdivision, let alone the development.
I think my main concern was just that, considering the off-street parking in group developments and the potential for that to sort of circumvent some of the important, I think, parking changes that we've made over the last few years. So I guess I'm still a little curious about why, and that's particularly an issue along the corridor, in corridor mixed use. And honestly, this is a good segue from the Pluserbia conversation. So I think what council has agreed in the past that we don't like how that area has developed, and we don't want it to be a sea of parking lots when you drive through Brevard. So could a developer along the corridor, utilize this group development to then, build a parking lot that otherwise would not be allowable under the current rules?
No. The short answer is no. The long answer is we still have requirements for them. So what would happen is that they would be subject to the requirements that all buildings, that there may be no parking between a building and the street.
Okay.
If they wanted to do something different, because they're a group development, they can have this option. It is a may, not a must. That's an important distinction as well.
Yeah.
It is the location of off-street parking may be permitted between a principal structure and the street within a group development, so it's not a full-fledged requirement, a mandate.
Right.
And then if it is permitted, then they have to meet that requirement. And we did workshop these percentages with planning board. And we had a lot of discussion about how we might mitigate that impact while still being able to accommodate some of the more challenging topography, some of the a denser form of development, especially with some of the weird parcels, I believe is what Councilmember Wise said last time. But this was the attempt of staff and in turn by planning board to make it so that we can still have that development occur, but in a way that the predominant feature when you're driving or walking past the development is not parking. I would also like to point out that we added the statement that additional buffers and landscaping may be required to obscure parking adjacent to the street. So we do have that authority to be, in the proposed amendments, have the authority to make sure that that is more robust in order to fulfill that as well.
Great. That does answer my question, because I think that the fact that the stand, but, you know, there's a you can if sort of provision is important. The only other question I had was on the private roads for subdivisions and the maintenance being guaranteed in perpetuity.
Yes.
I just had a question about like how what's the enforcement mechanism on that? Is that like any other code enforcement?
No,
or
it's a
okay.
deed. It's
Okay.
it's a covenant on a deed. And so that is part of why, if I could find it exactly in these big amendments, there is a new certification that is included in North Carolina law where it talks about private roads being accessible to public, for public services. It does talk about the municipalities and counties as well may allow you to subdivide off of a private road, but there has to be a clear statement and disclosure statement on the plat that everybody signs, in the deed, in all of those kind of documentations that you get if you if you purchase a house in that area. And that disclosure makes it so that everybody knows that if it's not maintained it's not sufficiently maintained, then it may impact their ability to have public services. And so that's not necessarily something that we regulate on an ongoing basis, but the regulations that we have put into this chapter make it so that it's starting off, the private road is starting off as strong as it can be, right? Equivalent to that of a public road. And so we then have that disclosure in perpetuity, and that's important per North Carolina law.
And okay, I'm just imagining a private road and there is a group development off of that private road or some other development, and it starts out great, but ends up not so great. I mean, do we have another option other than, wait, actually the fire department's not gonna show up if your house burns down? Or like, I mean, can we say like, hey, you gotta fix that, you know, the potholes in the road?
We can say that.
Yeah.
We have less of an enforcement measure outside of our jurisdiction on those kind of things.
Right.
And the way that we have written this ordinance is that it only is, private roads may only serve as the road frontage in the ETJ where we can't accept a road.
Right. Okay. Okay, well, I think those are my questions. I
Want to add anything? Oh, okay.
okay.
I was gonna add that one part, that important distinction, that it's only in the ETJ where there's state roads.
Right. Well, I mean, overall, I think these are great changes. As the rest of council said, I think we're continuing to improve on how we deal with what Councilman, I believe the term was weird land. So we're dealing with the weird land that we have and encouraging development where we can, especially considering the limitations that we have. So thank you for the hard work.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. I believe everyone has commented. I lost track, I think. Okay. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the amendment is approved. Moving on to new business. First item is to authorize the city manager to enter into a lease agreement for 132 Commerce Street.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I didn't include the actual contract in the package because it's still under negotiation, but I've included the highlights and I think the most notable details here. And so I'm asking you all to authorize me to continue negotiating and finalize the terms of this contract and to sign it on the city's behalf so that we can start the process of relocating our police department to their new facility. I can tell you that the things that we're still negotiating, but that the landlord has shown good faith on, and that I think we're going to be able to come to common ground are special exceptions to the Buildings Condominium Association to accommodate our special needs as a police department. For example, the condominium association gives the landlord immediate access to the facility at any time. Well, obviously, that doesn't work for us because we have evidence stored there that there's a chain of possession and so forth over. And so we've just changed that term to they must be accompanied. And so there are a couple other small points like that that we're working through with them, but I'm confident that we'll reach a meeting of the minds soon. And if you so authorize me, we'll have a lease for our police department here within the next day or two.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the manager to enter into the lease agreement?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, open for discussion. Mr. Daniel?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, Mr. Wise?
Nothing to add?
Ms. Holder?
Will they have access to the building, with or without us? I understand that you will have in the contract that they should not enter without escort.
Correct.
But will they also have keys to the building that they could get in without an escort?
They will not, well, that's a good idea. That's a good point. I have to clarify that, but they will not have keys to the secure area. So they might have keys to the public area, but not to the secure area.
Okay.
Mr. Morrow?
No.
Mr. Baker?
No, I don't have any questions. I think this, we've had some discussion about our overall space needs, not just for the police department, but for the entire city. And I'm definitely feeling like as we move forward with the next year's budget and sort of move into the next year, that we need to have that discussion and have a plan for where the city's offices are and how the police department and the fire department and public works all fit in with that, and look 5 to 10 years out, not just in the short term. So looking forward to that.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Manager is approved to enter into the lease agreement. Our second item of new business is the Burl Mountain Water Tank Project Amendment and Funding Increase Resolution. Do I have, Mr. Manager, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to point out that the extra money that this agenda item requests from you all to pay for the debt service of the 0% loan that the state has offered us here is already baked into the budget. So the bottom line of the budget won't change because of this.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the funding increase for the Burl Mountain Water Tank Project?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wise? Okay. Mr. Morrow?
And this is a great improvement, and it's wonderful to have the grant. Thank you.
Mr. Wise?
No comment?
Ms. Holder?
No comment.
Mr. Daniel?
No comment.
Mr. Baker?
Only to say that I wonder if we could count up all the money, the extra money we spent over all time for unsuitable soil. Because I think the city of Brevard has, over history, spent a lot of money there. But, this is a.
Weird land.
Yeah, weird soil, weird land.
Right?
Yeah. But this is a good improvement, and unfortunate that it costs a little bit more than we thought, but that's how things go sometimes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is approved. Our third item of new business is amendment to the city council meeting calendar. Mr. Manager.
I'll just refer to the staff report and ask for a motion.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the changes to the city council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Who is that?
Me.
Mr. Baker?
Second,
Okay.
yep.
Mr. Morrow, any comments?
No?
Mr. Baker?
I'm glad to see that we're going to be holding a regular meeting at the Mary C. Jenkins Community Center. I know I've brought that up before, and we've talked about it, and I understand there are challenges to moving the regular meeting, but I think that's an important symbolic step and another opportunity for us to open up that building, even though it's been open for a little while, but to have a little mini celebration again and recognize that great accomplishment. So, thank you.
Mr. Daniel?
No, I have no comments.
Ms. Holder?
No comment, thank you.
Mr. Wise?
No, this is a great idea. Thanks.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment to our council meeting calendar is approved. And that is the end of new business. We will move on to remarks. And let's start with Mr. Wise.
Thanks, guys, for hanging in there. I want to talk about two things quickly. I know it's been a long night, but I don't want to lose sight of our two proclamations that we had this earlier in the evening, both for Juneteenth and for Pride Month. I think these are fantastic for our city to show people, one, that we are an all-inclusive, caring community, and they're also important benchmark for both those communities and our community as a whole. Juneteenth especially is, I would argue, one of the most important holidays our country has, and it goes a little distance in fixing something that is so egregious it's hard to actually conceptualize. So I don't want to lose sight of the importance of that. And Pride Month hopefully begins to bring people into our community that have been marginalized for far too long for no reason at all. So I think these are both really important and really joyous things to think about as we are kind of moving through some difficult other issues happening in our community. I don't want to lose sight of how important those movements are, because they reemphasize the strength of our community and the importance of all the people here.
Ms. Holder?
I just want to say again how important I feel it is that we come together as a community. And I don't want to belabor the point, but there was one meeting in Rosenwald, but there were several in the community. It would have been good for us to come together, and I think this is an opportunity for us to explore that. We're not going to always agree, but at least we can come together and make the effort. And I think that we're all deep down, at least I hope, willing to do that. I certainly am. And would like to see this as an opportunity to move forward in a different way. And I hope that that can happen. And thank you all for staying.
Mr. Morrow?
I'll use your word, ditto.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Daniel?
Well, I would like to just say, I think that this meeting, and even, I would include the White Squirrel Festival, exemplifies the hard work that our staff does. It's reflected in several of these presentations that are in our budget as well. So I'd like to thank them for that, so appreciate it.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I was going to take the opportunity. This is the first meeting we've had since White Squirrel Festival, so I want to thank Nicole and the Heart of Brevard. I kind of felt like we were back to normal a little bit, and even exceeded what was normal before COVID. So, by all accounts, it was a great festival, very well organized. Saturday was wild. Saturday night was just incredible to see that many people on Main Street. So very impressed with all the work that went into that. And also it was the first year that we've had the social district open during the festival. And, downtown did not burn down, surprisingly. I was anticipating that based on earlier comments.
It was lightning.
But, yeah, it was a great event. Looking forward to more in the future. And thanks to the Heart of Brevard.
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, I just want to thank you, folks sitting up here. It's become apparent over the last week or so that not all meetings are performed in such a genteel, honest way. And I just want to tell you, I guess on behalf of the public, that sometimes you hear stuff during these public comments that you don't necessarily like, or that every fiber of your being wants you to jump over the table and take a swing at somebody. And I just appreciate, because it cleans up a lot of messes for me, that you take public comment for what it is. Taking input from the public and listening to what's being said by the constituents that put you up here. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that, and I really appreciate it.
Madam Clerk?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, ma'am. I have one serious thing and one happy thing. The first is going back to a comment that Mr. Warren and Councilmember Holder made earlier about exploring the possibility of differentiated property tax rate for different income levels. That's a meritorious idea, but unfortunately, it's not legal in the state of North Carolina. And in fact, not even in the statutes, but according to the state constitution. And so a hard prohibition on that. And then another nuance is that any exemption you make from property tax has to be made statewide. We can't have an exemption in Brevard and a different one in Asheville and a different one in Durham. If there's going to be any exemption, it has to be set by the General Assembly, and it has to be statewide. And with that said, there's a movement afoot amongst county commissioners in the western and eastern counties of the state to get the General Assembly to pass a different tax rate for second homes. And so communities like ours that have a lot of vacation homes and second homes that, sit vacant most of the year but still burden our services have to pay a different rate. And it's the first time in a long time that notion has got some momentum. And our very own county manager, Jamie Lauder, is on the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Legislative Committee, and she's helping push this effort, along with some managers from the eastern part of the state. I think Carteret County was the other big one. And so I'm not saying it's going to pass the General Assembly. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but a stronger possibility than it's been in years, and it's gaining momentum. And so perhaps not this session, but in sessions to come, we might have the ability to charge a different tax rate to second homes. And that would benefit the tax base of our community greatly.
Could I make a quick comment regarding that? I know I'm out of order.
Yes, you're out of order, but go ahead.
Thank you. If there's an opportunity for us, for this board, to consider a resolution of support for a bill like that, I would ask the manager to consider that.
I'll see if there's a bill, and if there is, bring it back. The piece of good news is that you'll notice that our Public Works Director, Wesley Shook, is not here today. That's because he welcomed his second grandchild today, a little girl named Amy. And so when he comes back to work, please congratulate him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Well, I too want to offer some thanks. First, I want to thank the staff, and I want to thank the public for the budget that we now have. I appreciate all of the time, the effort, the comments, the people that came that made us think about it. And as you can see, we've listened to a lot of the comments. That 2-cent tax increase did not go in the budget this year. So, but I know how much work it took for the staff and for the manager. I particularly want to thank our city manager for all of the effort that went into the budget. It is a complicated budget. It is difficult. We have challenges that we have to meet. We've talked about some of those. But I think this is a budget that is going to balance. It's going to allow us to go forward in the areas we need to and continue making progress in those areas that we are so committed to moving forward on. So thank you. I don't think you understand just how much work goes into this budget, but it's a lot. I also want to thank about the White Squirrel Festival. You know, for a little town of 8,000 people, and for our partner, Harder Brevard, who has, 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, for Harder Brevard to put on a festival, a 3-day festival that rivals any festival in a gigantic city is absolutely amazing. You guys rock. You absolutely brought it home. That was the best White Squirrel Festival. This community has the best Main Street organization ever. So, thank you. And let's see. Yeah, I am really proud today that, we were able to recognize Juneteenth and Pride, here in the city. Brevard is a very, very special place. Brevard has an incredible heart. We have an incredible welcoming nature, and I hope that we all embrace that. And I really encourage you to come to our Juneteenth celebration. It's on the 15th and 16th, Saturday and Sunday. Please come down, join us in fellowship, join us in community, join us in inclusion, join us in learning more about what Juneteenth is about the past that we need to understand in order to be able to move forward. So please do come to that celebration. And with that, I don't think we even have a closed session. So I think I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.